All right, welcome. These are some helpful guidelines to write the literary analysis of death's door using the critical lens archetypal criticism. So let's start out by taking a wider picture and saying, remember that you are still doing a literary analysis. That is to say, you need to have a claim. The claim needs to appear at or near the end of the first paragraph. And that claim, that thesis, should be using an answer to the question, what is the role of archetype as presented in the play Death's Door? And the way that you will identify that is you'll say what your answer is, what is the role, and then you're going to be identifying some kind of literary devices that support what you're finding. Well, what does that mean? Let's start by talking generally about what we mean when we say that we are doing, in this case, what's called a theoretically informed close reading. This is from a brief guide to writing the English paper. It's under Course Basics. It was created by the Harvard Writing Center. This says, in some courses, you will be asked to analyze a poem, a play, or a novel using a critical theory. That's what we're doing here. In this case, we're using archetypal criticism to analyze the play Death's Door. Critical theories provide focus for your analysis. In other words, we're only going to be looking through the lens of archetypal criticism. Archetypal criticism uses the idea of archetypes, of already existing religious ideas, beliefs, systems, other kinds of symbols that are deeply embedded in the consciousness of the audience. The audience comes with these archetypes ready loaded. And I'm going to give you a little help here in saying death and the idea of death being personified is an archetype. The idea of what happens after death is archetypal based on certain kinds of beliefs. What happens as you go from living into death also has archetypal idea around it. Excuse me. Religion and the religious specificity around death and passages. These are just some examples of archetypes that are connected to the particular piece we're looking at. So that's the lens. The focus is going to be, you're going to look and try and find specific places to be your focus on the scenes in the play that are most relevant to that concept of archetypes and how to think about archetypes, okay? So that's the sort of wider view. Let's take a look at a way I have suggested that you can think about to generate your mind getting moving in the direction of this analysis. First, you're going to basically make a catalog of the people and the characters and the things, the interactions, the situations they're in. And you're going to just really sort of generally and stereotypically think of who they are. Are they male or female? Are they lower or upper class, natives, foreigners, strangers, or friends? What is their situation? And then another thing I'd like you to think about is what long-held beliefs or traditions can you locate in their interactions or the situation? This is really just almost like a brainstorm list. Then the next thing you're going to have to do is, after you have those very specific places in the play that meet up to this idea, where do you see the traditions? What do you see these characters representing? Especially with an eye looking towards archetypes. Now, I want you to examine the way that those particular characters and the situation they find themselves and the interactions that they're in, how do they fit within the boxes, the traditions, or the beliefs that you've assigned to them? Are they seamlessly apart, just reinforcing what the archetype is, what we already know? Are they questioning it? In this case, they call this undermining. Are they looking at it from a different perspective? And then how do you notice that? How do you notice if they're looking at it the same or the different? And when the answer to the question, how do you notice, is that you will notice that the author is writing it into the piece. That's number 2. And then in number 3, what does this mean? Well, let's talk about it. Now you're going to write the paper as if you are giving a new or amended definition of the category. The category in this case are the archetypes that you're looking at, the belief, the traditions, the specific images around certain kinds of people in this particular play. And what I mean by an amended definition is it's probably not going to be just a repetition of the same story of whatever death is or how it's archetyped, right? And so what you're going to be looking to try and do in your main goal is find points that will highlight the ways the text uses or discards those accepted categories, the beliefs and the traditions. Now, make sure you use lots of places in the play. Again, thesis needs to come in the first paragraph. Each subsequent paragraph should have very specific places that connect back to the idea of what is an archetype. Okay, what is the archetype that's being looked at here? Are you noticing that it's being reinforced or being worked against there? This is how you build your argument. Choose good places. Make sure they connect. Watch out for oversimplified claims, like the old woman is reluctant to die and death is inevitable, those kind of things, right? I'm not saying you can't say those things, but if you do, you need to ask yourself, how or why did the author create this effect? What's the technique? How do you know? And why is that important for the overall idea of what you're saying about what this play has to say through an archetypal lens about beliefs and traditions? Now, some slightly more sort of basic stuff. Don't cover the whole play. Please do not cover the whole play. You do not summarize, all right? Just get me to the place in the play you're talking about. Finally, make sure you understand that what we mean when we talk about this particular way of looking. So really feel comfortable with that. Don't explain the critical theory. You should presume I already know the critical theory. You also should presume that I have read the play. You do not need to tell me what's in the play. I've already read it. You do not need to tell me what archetypal criticism is. I already know. You do need to explain how the particular aspect of archetypal criticism that you're looking at applies. Let's go back to the brief guide here. These pages are covering doing prose and poetry, close reading. But here down at the bottom, they talk about drama. These are some questions you can think about. These will inform how you write. The answers to these questions will not necessarily make up the essay, but if you're struggling to figure out how to approach this, this can be helpful. Okay? You'll likely ask a combination of the kinds of questions that are relevant to both prose and poetry when you're doing drama. And then notice what kinds of questions are not listed. You don't have to spend a heck of a lot of time doing this particular way. Now let's talk again about some very sort of practical aspects. We already discussed, don't summarize the play. Make sure your thesis is in the first paragraph. Make sure you've got some kind of specific claim connected to a specific place in text, connected to the specific lens in each paragraph. Make sure that you are using, in fact, before I get to this specific stuff, let me just mention here the way you're going to use the scholarly article that you have found is that you will use quotes from that article that help you understand how to think about archetypal criticism as you're using it in this essay. Got it? So you're not saying, here's what archetypal criticism is, but you could say, archetypal criticism recognizes these particular archetypes that are relevant here. And here's how I know, because I found it in this scholarly article. Get it? You don't need to rely on the scholarly article that much. Okay, back to some details. Don't write in first person. Avoid first person. That's I, me, my, mine. We, us, our. Please do not. Write about the work. Make sure that each thesis or topic of a paragraph, so the main thesis, of course, has to be about the work. Focus it on the topic, not the author. This one's a biggie. Be cautious about praise. What does this mean? This is an incredible piece of work that visually, stunningly shows how, no, we don't need any of the praise. It's just, this is a play that confronts the idea of death and dying, right? We don't need to have all the flowery buildup of praise. I'm more interested in not your evaluative opinion about how well it's being done, not your evaluation. It's good, it's great, it's clever, it's fantastic, it's mind-changing. What I want to see is how you came to the conclusions that you came to. Here's what I see happening in the play. Here's the piece from the play that I see showing what I see happening. Here's why those two things are connected. Okay? Other than, the things that you just have to be careful of, which are really, proofread, make sure you know the length that you need, make sure you include a reference to the scholarly article. That should really keep you going. I hope this was helpful. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I will talk to you soon.